Welcome to our channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave comments. Today's story is about a man whom we will call Mr. A. He is in his early 30s and has spent many years working in the nightlife industry. Over time, he took on many roles: bartender, DJ, and even assistant manager. He was familiar with every aspect of behind-the-scenes operations, from cost control and promotional planning to managing staff and daily operations. Yet deep inside, Mr. A didn't want to remain an employee forever, working for someone else. He dreamed of owning a place of his own. His goal was to open a pub and restaurant, a place where customers could relax, eat, drink, unwind, and enjoy themselves in a lively yet comfortable atmosphere. After nearly 5 years of carefully saving money, Mr. A finally felt ready to turn his dream into reality. He began searching for a location around the city. However, the biggest obstacle he faced was rent. Every place he visited came with an extremely high rental price. He spent several months searching, but still couldn't find a location that truly felt right. Then one day, a real estate agent he had previously contacted called him. The agent mentioned a place that sounded promising, an old building located in an alley not far from a shopping mall. It had once operated as a restaurant, but was now vacant. Most importantly, the rent was incredibly cheap. If Mr. A was interested, the agent suggested that he come take a look. Hearing this, Mr. A immediately went to see the place. When he arrived, he discovered a 2-story building that had been abandoned for quite some time. The exterior showed clear signs of age and neglect, yet there were still enough traces to tell that it had once been a restaurant. The ground floor consisted of a wide, open hall. In one corner stood an old wooden counter, worn down by time. Further inside were the kitchen area and separate restrooms for men and women. At the back of the building, a staircase led up to the second floor. Upstairs, there were 3 rooms in total. Although the overall atmosphere felt quiet and slightly unsettling, there was a strange charm to the place, something that drew him in, though he couldn't explain why. Mr. A walked around slowly to explore. He went up to the second floor to see whether it could be used as an office or a storage area. Of the 3 rooms upstairs, the second and third rooms were open and appeared completely normal, with nothing unusual about them. However, there was one room, the one located at the very end of the hallway. The door to this room was tightly shut. Attached to it was a large, old, faded white talisman, nearly the size of a window. It had been firmly plastered onto the door. The talisman was covered in dark red characters written all over it, but it was impossible to tell what language they were in. As Mr. A stood there, staring at the talisman with growing curiosity, the real estate agent casually added,
"That's been there for a long time. It belonged to the previous tenant. It's probably something related to spiritual things, I think, but I'm not really sure."
Hearing this explanation, Mr. A didn't give it much thought, as he had seen such things before. He opened the door and found that the room was completely enclosed with no windows at all. It was an empty, sealed-off space with no furniture, nothing at all. Mr. A felt that the room didn't have much use, except for storage. At best, it could simply remain closed. There was no particular need for it, he thought. After finishing his inspection, Mr. A decided that the building was suitable enough for opening his dream restaurant. It might not have been perfect, but the rent was reasonable and realistic for someone starting a new business. Without much delay, he decided to sign the lease. Once the contract was finalized, renovations began immediately. Workers came in to tear out old, unused structures, replace lighting, repaint the walls, and install various systems. Gradually, the interior of the restaurant started to look much better. However, one thing remained exactly as it was, the talisman hanging on the door of the innermost room at the end of the hallway. Mr. A chose to leave it there, dismissing it as nothing more than decoration. At first, despite passing that door almost every day, he felt nothing out of the ordinary. But as time went on and his trips up and down the stairs became more frequent, a faint unease began to creep in. Without realizing it, his gaze lingered longer each time, as though something unseen were quietly pulling his attention toward the talisman. On top of that, more and more labor workers began telling him about strange incidents. Some workers said they heard footsteps pacing back and forth inside that room. Others claimed they smelled a foul, lingering stench on the second floor, though no one could identify where it was coming from. Despite hearing these stories, Mr. A didn't take them seriously, as he was busy trying to prepare everything before the restaurant's opening. Then one night, it was so late that he couldn't even go home, so he decided to sleep overnight in the office on the second floor. As he lay on a makeshift bed, he heard strange sounds, almost as if something were being dragged back and forth right in front of his room. He had opened the door to check several times before, but had never found anything unusual. However, as the sounds occurred more and more frequently, he began to question what was happening, because he knew perfectly well that he was the only person sleeping in the entire building. The strange incidents caused Mr. A to grow inexplicably irritable. He wasn't the type to believe in the supernatural. Ghosts never scared him, temples held no meaning for him, and he followed no spiritual practices. Yet despite all that, a persistent unease gnawed at him, something he couldn't quite put into words. Then one day, as Mr. A passed by the innermost room, his gaze finally settled on the talisman affixed to its door. Until then, he had barely noticed it, but now it seemed almost to demand his attention. For the first time, he questioned his long-held indifference toward such things. He found himself staring at it, unable to look away. It felt as though something were drawing him in, compelling him to pull it down. And nothing happened. But after he turned around and walked back into the office, the light bulb suddenly began flickering on and off. A sharp, icy chill ran down the back of his neck, as if something cold had brushed past him. Goosebumps spread across his skin. A few days later, on yet another night, he had to stay overnight at the restaurant. He had a dream that felt unbelievably real. He was standing in the middle of a pitch-dark room. It was the innermost room on the second floor, the very room whose door he had once torn the talisman from. In one corner sat a woman, hugging her knees tightly to her chest. She was facing away from him and did not move at all. Her long hair hung down and trailed across the floor, and she was wearing an old, faded black t-shirt. He softly called out to her, but there was no reply. He decided to walk closer. After only a few steps, the woman slowly began to move her head, as if she were about to turn around and face him. But just before he could see her face, Mr. A jolted awake. He woke in shock. Gasping for air and drenched in sweat, the dream had felt far too real. The following morning, remembering the dream from the night before, Mr. A walked over out of curiosity and opened the door to check. Inside, it was still empty, just as before, with nothing out of the ordinary at all. As he closed the door, he felt slightly foolish for having thought the dream might mean something significant. Time passed, and eventually the restaurant's opening day arrived. Everything went well. The restaurant received an overwhelmingly positive response, with customers coming in non-stop. Mr. A had to hire additional staff, a waitress in her mid-20s. She was hardworking, always on time, highly trusted, and genuinely loved by both her coworkers and customers. However, after working for only a month, she suddenly stopped coming to work. Mr. A grew worried because she was normally extremely diligent and had never missed a single day. If anything ever came up, she always informed him in advance. Her absence was completely out of character. Mr. A decided to call and ask about the reason. She did answer the phone, but the sound of her voice was deeply unsettling. It trembled, her words hesitant and broken, like someone gripped by fear. Mr. A tried to calm her, asking her to explain exactly what had happened. She told him that on Friday night, shortly before closing time, she had gone up to the second floor around midnight to retrieve documents Mr. A had forgotten in the office. The restaurant was completely silent. The only light came from the orange glow of the motion sensor ceiling lamps, which turned on and off whenever someone walked past. When she reached the second floor, the light switched on, and she startled. Standing in front of the innermost room was a woman. The woman was wearing a faded black t-shirt, her long hair reaching all the way down to her waist. She stood facing the door, her back turned toward the waitress, completely motionless. Though surprised, she assumed it was a customer who had wandered upstairs by mistake, perhaps drunk and looking for the restroom. She slowly walked closer and softly asked,
Excuse me, are you looking for something? The bathroom is downstairs.
There was no response. The woman remained utterly still without even shifting her body. What happened next terrified her to her very core. All of a sudden, the woman stepped forward and walked straight into the tightly closed door. Then, the woman vanished right before her eyes. All she could do was stand there in shock, so startled that her body went completely stiff. Time passed before she could regain her composure. Once she finally came to her senses, she hurriedly ran downstairs in tears, grabbed her bag, and left immediately, heading straight home without saying a single word to anyone. Mr. A was stunned, but before finishing, she added one final word.
Something is definitely going on inside your restaurant.
Those words sent chills through Mr. A's entire body. Every single detail that the staff described matched exactly with a dream he had had earlier, down to the smallest detail. A woman with long hair, wearing black, standing with her back turned, not speaking, not moving. It was starting to seriously worry him. He couldn't shake the thought that everything must be linked to the talisman he had torn out. After the girl staff left and never returned to work, Mr. A tried his best to act as if everything was okay. He didn't dare tell the other employees about what had happened, because he was afraid that if he did, everyone would become terrified and completely lose their morale. But even though he stayed silent, strange incidents continued. Several employees began noticing that objects in the restaurant would suddenly fall on their own without anyone touching them. At times, items would even move from one place to another by themselves, and this happened quite often. Moreover, many customers complained about feeling uneasy in the women's restroom at the back, as if someone was secretly watching. The most disturbing part was that every employee reported the same thing. After sunset, strange sounds often came from the innermost room on the second floor. Gradually, regular customers stopped coming. The restaurant's atmosphere grew heavy and lifeless. Employees began quitting one by one. The place became quiet. Soft background music didn't help at all. Even the warm lighting failed to brighten the mood. Driven by curiosity and a need for answers, Mr. A contacted the real estate agent to ask about the building before moving in. At first, the agent clearly avoided answering. However, after persistent questioning, and after Mr. A threatened to expose everything online, the agent finally agreed to speak. According to the agent, more than 10 years ago, the building's previous owner had used that room in question to imprison a woman who was his girlfriend. There were rumors that the couple had a violent argument, which led to the woman's death under unknown circumstances. The man then fled, leaving her lifeless body inside the room. When the truth was eventually discovered, everything was exposed. After that, the building changed tenants many times, yet no one who moved in managed to stay for long. Businesses would open for only a few months before shutting down. One former tenant decided to place the talisman on the door, which seemed to help, but only temporarily. In the end, just like the others, they closed their shop. Everything the agent explained answered every lingering question in Mr. A's mind, but didn't make him feel any better. As time passed, the restaurant no longer had any customers. Mr. A finally decided to close the shop, pack up his belongings, and move out of the place for good. Before we wrap up, please subscribe to support this small channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss new stories. Thank you for watching and listening until the end. See you in the next video.